Good morning.
Testing, testing,
So,
testing.
We're going to do something a little different this morning. We are going to give really an update on our mission trip and all that we were able to experience being in Vanuatu and in Melbourne, Australia. I want to start by saying this. Thank you for those of you who gave. We had about $2,850 come in from the church that really does help offset our cost, and thank you for helping us with that and being a part of it with us as we go. So this slide here is a picture from up on a mountain looking back over the island of Efate. I may be saying it wrong. My wife corrects me every time I say it. But if you look across the bay is where Jamie and Bridget live in the school there. But it's one of 84 islands in Vanuatu, or 83? 83. See, I know I'm wrong. But about 65 of those islands are inhabited. And so I've got it somewhere here. I'm just going off script. And so actually that's correct. So anyway, this is, many of you can see the map on the back, and it gives a Vanuatu, but here's a positioning of where Vanuatu is on the map. A lot of people don't know where it is. So it's off the coast of Australia, about 1,000 miles, and that's where the island nation of Vanuatu is. And Melbourne, Australia, is at the very tip of Australia at the bottom, where you see the bay. There's a bay and all that above Tasmania. So it's the southernmost point of Australia is where Melbourne, Australia, and that's where Jeremy and Leah live. And so that gives you a perspective of where we went. You can see the Hawaiian Islands all the way up at the very far left corner and right corner. Yeah, the other right. And so that gives you a perspective of where Vanuatu is in the Pacific Ocean. Next slide. There we go.
All right, so we wanted to bring up and kind of thinking about what we were going to talk about today. As we talked about missions, we talked about going out to some of those other things. I looked at a few verses, and this was really brought to my mind. It was from Romans 10. It says, "For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they never have heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? That is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring good news." And so what we wanted to do is we go out as a church, as we go out with ICC, to go figure out what can we do to better serve the missionaries of the church? What can we do to better send them and give them the needs that they have so that they can go and send the messages? Because they are the feet of the church, and very real to us, the feet of ICC going out into the world. And as we went to both Vanuatu and Melbourne, as we went to go visit all of them, we wanted to see what is the best way that we as a church can help support them in the future. What can we do to better spread the message of Christ? And so we'll come back to this a little bit later. We're going to kind of pull that into somewhere else. But let's move into some of the things. I will say this, when we went there, I'm going off script here now myself. That never happens. What happened, we did spend a couple days in Fiji. It wasn't vacation. We were relaxing, getting caught up on, what did we say? Jet lag, yeah. That was our excuse. But we did find this as we went to Fiji. Just in case you were wondering, our first thought was, hey, they've got an island here for sale for $1.2 million. So if we raise that money, we as a church could all move to Fiji. But Randall shot that down for me, so we'll talk about the rest.
Yeah, this is a picture of the international airport in Vanuatu. And so as you look at it, again, it's modern in some senses. It would probably be about like a 1960s airport in America. I mean, there are no, you have to get off of ladders, and they have large jets come in there.
Ladders,
And
stairs, probably.
stairs, ladders, whatever. Yeah, Yeah, my wife needs to be talking instead of me. But anyway, this is just a picture of the airport where we flew in Port Villa. And Port Villa is on the island of Efate, and Jamie and Brigida live about 15 minutes from the airport. So we weren't very far away from their place when we arrived there.
So, it's on. Did you turn it on?
I think it's on.
Hello, hello.
Is it on?
Testing, testing.
Thank you. So, a lot of y'all know that one of the things that Brigida wanted was some roasted chilies. That was one of her first things that she said when we said, well, would you like us to bring anything? And she's like, yes, I would love some green chilies. So we orchestrated we were hoping that it would work. Nicholas, we wish he were here to help us with this, but he got from his stand, which he does the veggie fruit stand there in Durango, 4 big vacuum-packed, sealed green chilies. We froze them. This is the one thing that was on my thought list of like, I hope this works. Everything else I'd kind of gotten all the details worked out, but wasn't sure if this was going to get through customs we had to get it through Fiji, and we also had to get them through Vanuatu before. We were just praying that they wouldn't, say, no, you can't bring that in, because they have a long list of things that you can't bring to their islands. So we made it through Fiji. We declared, we said we had these, they were frozen, like I said, in our checked bags. They were like, okay, because not really knowing what they were. Then we get them to Vanuatu, and we go to that declared lane that you have to declare when you have stuff that may be questionable. And this was the story. So Randall and I went, and again, it was pretty rustic, I guess you could say. The men did have on uniforms as they're opening our bags, and they're taking out the newspaper and the padding and everything that I had it in, and they were like, and they're still frozen. And they're like, you made this all the way from the United States frozen? And we were like, yeah, yeah, we did. And they're still just wondering what these were. I know it was God's grace, because they were looking at them, and the guy called his supervisor over, and I'm just going, boom, 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 please let these come through, because I know how much she would appreciate dried, the green chilies. And I'm trying not to be too chatty, because, if you get too chatty, then they're like, why is this person still talking to me? So I'm just like, okay, because I could really go on how good these were. And do you know Jamie Sam, because he can make really good his wife can make real good green chili stew. I'm just trying to hold back and just, and the supervisor was looking down at it, just, kind of doing this. I'm like, oh, Lord, just it's okay. We're not going to contaminate this island. So.
Well, we did.
Well, but, it's not like we're bringing in whatever that would just be bad for the flora and the fauna, So anyway, the supervisor, just this big guy was looking down at it, and I'm still just praying, Lord, just grant us favor with these green chilies. And then I could see the supervisor just barely going, just barely doing his head like this. And the guy said, okay, y'all are good. And we're packing it all up as fast as we can to get out of there so they don't change their mind. So excited that we were able to bless Brigida with this green chili. We gave her 3 of the 4, and she was just over the top. This is a picture of her opening up the green chilies, and Nicholas is in the background. We're just thrilled that we could take a little bit of taste of home to her and to them, and so that she can bless people around them and let them see how good green chili stew and everything else is. And what's the next one? Oh, and the next one, this is where Brigida is opening up cards and letters from y'all. She just felt a little bit of taste and flavor, a feel of home. It was so sweet to see her just almost cry, with, what'd you see?
What happened to the 4th bag?
Oh, we took it to Jeremy. That was also on his list. Sorry, didn't mention that. Yeah, that was on his list as we were talking to Jeremy a few months ago about what. Yeah. What he wanted from here, and he was like, maybe green chili. So we were able to get that on then into Australia for him. He was excited about that. Yeah. Sorry about that little detail. But we felt so blessed and so honored to be able to bring these to Brigida. I could just tell, it just meant so much to her, and so we really appreciate y'all's time and effort in putting cards and letters together for her.
And I would add to that, all of the stuff that you guys gave.
Oh,
We were able to
absolutely.
take 4 suitcases full of things for them. A lot of them they're saving for Christmas. They didn't want to overwhelm Zalea with everything at once, but they were blessed. We were able to help with a lot of the materials they needed for the school, as they minister in the school, but also personal items for them. And thank you. You guys were a great blessing, and they really felt overwhelmed, but they felt very loved. So
I
thank
wish
you.
I could have gotten pictures of everything, as she was opening stuff, but she was holding back, and so she didn't necessarily look at stuff when Zalea was around, because she didn't want her to see all the goodies. But did we get a picture up there? Oh, I forgot to get of the backpack. That was one thing that she did give to her. I don't know if y'all saw that on the list, but Zalea is so quiet. She's very reserved, and she will warm up to you after you've been around a while, and that was very sweet for her to actually start talking to us instead of to her mom, and then Brigida would translate to us, but not translate, but then just tell us what she had said. But it was very sweet when she put on the backpack and walked back to her place in it, and Brigida was able to get an actual picture of her with the backpack on. So that was one thing that was very, very fun to see her be so excited about.
So this is a picture of the compound that they work in a school. It's a Christian school. It was established in 2009, I believe, or 10. There's about 200 students from K through 10th grade. They only do formal education through 10th grade there, and it's called Life Changer. There, again, are about 200 students there. Most of them come from a lot of the other islands. It was interesting visiting the kids. They came from different islands around Vanuatu again, and we were there 2 weeks before school was out, and so we finished up the school year with their specific ministry with teenagers, and we were able to do that. They come from a very poor environment. We would bring food to some of the things that we did, and John, if you want to, you could kind of start looking at some of the other pictures there with the kids and stuff. But every time they ate everything that was presented. There was nothing left over. And so the kids weren't getting fed well wherever they were living, and a lot of places where they were living. And I'm going to let Jennifer and Beau kind of share some of this, what we did with these, with the kids there.
So we started out, that first picture that you saw right after the Life Changers, that's a 7th grade math class. For those of you who know, I used to teach math. So this was fun to go into this classroom. We got to talk just a little bit to them. This is where my comfort zone is talking in front of children, not adults. So if I look nervous, it's because I am. But we got to tell them a little bit about us and about our story. We all got to talk a little bit. And then we got to talk to an 8th grade class next, and that was a little bit smaller, so we kind of did a circle instead of talking in front of the group. And then this right here is where we had, they had an after-school club. So after school was out, we did some activities with them. We were gonna play games outside, but it was pouring down rain at that moment. So we pivoted and we stayed inside and played some games in there. And this is Beau kind of sharing his message that tied all the games that we played together. This picture is the group of girls that Sherri and I got to talk with. They were very interested in what language we spoke, because apparently we speak different English than they're used to hearing. I mean, Southern accents and all. So they were very interested and wanted to know. They had all kinds of questions. They were very shy, so they would like talk to each other. And this is a worldwide thing. Middle schoolers talk to each other to figure out who's going to ask the question. They did that as well. So this is Nicholas. They were playing bottle flip before, and this little kid was really good at bottle flip. So him and Nicholas were going back and forth with trying to flip the bottle. If you've ever played that or ever seen it, it's flip the bottle, try to get it to land upright again. So this was full of water. And then we had, at the end of the week, they had a celebration kind of to end their ministry. For the year, these were the kids that showed up. A lot of them met at the school, and they took trucks, and they took them to, this is one of Bridget and Jamie's church members that go to church with them. This is their house, their backyard, and they allowed us to use it for the party. And so this is us, all the kids hanging out and running around. They were playing games. They had a soccer ball with them, of course, because that's big. The other thing they really enjoyed, so I was helping their sports master. That's what the athletic director is called there. For those of you that don't know, that's my job now. So I kind of got to help him, and we kind of came up with some games to play. So that was a little bit of structure, but he had this, he called it powder, like a powder game. So if you've ever done the color run in Ignacio in April, all this color that gets thrown on you as you run through the 5K, this is what it was. It was packs of powder, and they just started throwing it on each other. So this is all of them. This is tug of war, so Nicholas and I beat Beau's team. But yeah, so this is them just playing with the rope, and we had a lot of fun. We ended up, I think there's one picture of us at the beach. Yeah, so we ended up, so their property led to a little gate that went straight to the beach. So we got to take the kids. Some of these kids, they go to the beach a lot, but a lot of them just jumped in with their clothes, everything. They didn't really have swimsuits. They had a wet set of clothes and a dry set of clothes, so they all brought a change of clothes with them in case they got wet. So this is them in the truck before we headed out.
That's the school bus.
Yeah, that's their school bus.
So we did go, and so now I will say this about kind of the school and life changers. One of the neat things that we talked about is they are the only school that has that discipleship group and that discipleship time built into it. But there's no other school on the island with it. One of the things that we were talking with Jamie and Bridget and between Randall and I is like, well, what's going to happen when the couple that owns this is from Australia, correct? And they just started this school in 2009 and said we want to start this going. And so it's been going since then. But we kind of asked the question, well, what happens when that couple passes on? They're older. Nobody knows. They don't know. So I think that's something to pray about. Like one of those ministries, like it's the only one that has a ministry of true discipleship to the youth for a school thing. And so I think it's something that for us as a church to pray for about in the future. What can ICC do to help with that? What can we do to see those ministries still going on with the island? And that's some of the things that we're going to continue on talking with as we get towards the end. We did go to church on Sunday while we were in Vanuatu to ICC. Randall?
International Christian Church. And so it was cool. Sherri took a picture of the screen with welcoming people to ICC. So it felt very much like home. And it was cool to be there and to interact with people that Jamie and Bridget go to school or church with. And one of the things I would say about Jamie and Bridget, they are well loved and respected on the island. A lot of people know them from all walks of life. They have a close church family there. The church there is made up of a lot of expats. So this was not necessarily a Vanuatu church. There was Vanuatu people there, but it was a modern church. They just built a new building. And that's one of the things that was kind of interesting coming to Vanuatu. They had very modern supermarkets there. We drove, our rental car was a Sorrento, brand new Sorrento, and You know, if you just look at it from the surface, you go, this is a modern place. And there are people who live there in fancy houses, fancier than our houses. And so you can get this facade of everything is good. But when I talked to Bridget about it, it is considered a third world country when a cyclone hits because it devastates the island. And then when the cyclone relief is over, then it's called a developing country, which is one step up. You will have very fancy houses next to a hut, and it's, you know, made out of tin. Sometimes there's electricity, sometimes there's not. It's very small. We visited a little bit of that when we went around the island. We'll have a picture a little bit about that. But the average wage in Vanuatu is $3 an hour. And that's what Bridget and Jamie get for working at the school, which is about $800 a month for them to live on. Now they do have, if you go back one slide, you can kind of see where they live. Behind the truck is some apartments. They live in a 2-bedroom apartment. And Jamie's mother lives there with them. We have a picture of her later. And so her and Zalea share a bedroom, and Jamie and Bridget share a bedroom. And so they're kind of taken care of, but the food and the gasoline there is more expensive than here. And so it's a very expensive place, and most people spend all their money just to eat. And most Vanuatu people, when they go in the grocery store, they can't purchase all the fancy items that we do. They get the very basics, or they go to a little store to do that. So it's a very interesting dynamic, and it's a facade to think that everybody's doing okay because they're not. And a lot of people will go off the island to work as fruit pickers in New Zealand or Australia and hope to save up enough money to build a cyclone-proof house when they come home. And so that's where a lot of those kids, even that were in the school, may have parents off the island trying to make a living to come back to the island to give a little better way of life for their families. Beau, why don't you share this picture? So before you share, y'all need to pronounce the name of this cafe.
Somebody tell me the name of this cafe really quick. Just say it. And it is the number one cafe. Now, let's talk about this. Number one and everything else that comes with it. So, one of the things that we went there, when we got to Vanuatu, we realized, well, we'll start off this. I had to drive to the number one cafe. I drove also in Fiji. Fiji drives on the other side of the road, and your steering wheel on the wrong side of the car. And so every time I went to try to turn, we washed the windows. And so for every time that we were driving down through there, you have to understand that my original language is sarcasm. And apparently Nick's is too. So Nicholas and I, for the first week and a half, probably went on, this thing just back and forth through the whole time, kind of picking on each other as we're driving through. So we pull up, we finally get to, well, there was, a sidewalk here and there in Fiji, or a curb, or other things, until we figured that out. He's dealing with that this week. So I'll ask him about it when he gets back.
So I can interrupt real quick. We FaceTime Nicholas. He's in New Zealand for 2 weeks. He flew to New Zealand and met his roommate there, and they're touring the islands over there. And he said, I have to apologize to Beau for all the mess up I gave him on driving in Fiji. And so he's officially apologizing now.
So they had a good time kind of picking back and forth. So we went to the island, and of course we learned a little bit. We understood a few things. In Fiji, you have to understand there's this huge Indian influence, and that was from years in the past of how it is. So there was a very Indian influence towards the island. So when we get to Vanuatu, you have more of a Chinese influence that's kind of on the islands with the original islanders that are there. But they all speak a different type of language, not just English. They also have French as one of the languages that they learned through one of the schools, correct? So is English. Some of the other schools teach French. Then they speak this other language, which is called Bislama. Bislama is a lot like if you've ever been to Hawaii and you've seen Hawaii Pidgin. you get that? And I was like, somewhat. But it was very difficult. What you had to understand is a lot of this in that language, and we're going to talk about why this matters kind of with translations and things here in just a minute. But when you look at that language and you go to understand it, you have to understand that a lot of this is from a oral tradition, not a written tradition, right? So number one, this is like number one cafe with number one. We also saw a few stores there that had some different names. We passed an electronic store that on their little slogan underneath was what we drop them price every day. Yeah. And how I said it, you have to imagine how you would write that down. The reality between Bislama is what Jamie told us is like, it's never spelled the same, depends on who's writing. So there is this kind of strange way of looking at it to say, how do we communicate this language in different ways? And so, that's one of the things that Jamie is working on, is being able to translate that language, translate the Bible into that language, both audio and written. So we do have a few written Bibles, and I think mine's at the house. But if you look at it, it's really difficult to even open it up and look and understand. But the reality is, you almost have to speak it out loud so that you can hear orally what it sounds like. So, Randall, I'm going to pass it on to you for your next picture.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a picture of Jamie's mother that lives with them, with Bridget and Zalea. And she had been off. Again, she dealt with a couple of deaths in the family. There's been a lot of death in Jamie's family. And she had just returned from one funeral, and she left for another funeral. And so one of their ministries is to their family. Go to the next slide. And this is his uncle, and he's more like a grandfather to Zalea. And if Jamie's mother wasn't living with him, they said he probably would be living. This was going around the island. We spent Monday before we left touring, going around the island, which is about 100 miles total around. And this was probably 30, 40 miles from where they live. And this is one of the audio Bibles that Jamie was given to his uncle. And it's in Bislama. And so it's a little recorder and battery operated, and he was able to give that. And we had an opportunity to meet with him and pray with him there. Go to the next slide. And this is Jamie's sister. And when we arrived at their house, they had put together these snacks for us and welcomed us, and we had an opportunity to visit with them. Next slide is some of the children there, and Sherri's, there's some kind of a nuts. There was a lot of fruits that we didn't know what we were eating, but they were really good. And this was some of the children there, and you can kind of see their housing behind them of what's there. And again, when a cyclone comes through, it destroys it. Go on to the next slide. And this is the island of Ameu, something like that. This is Jamie's home island. And there are about 1,000 inhabitants on it. And you get to the island with these boats. And that's where the funerals were taking place. We were planning to go, but because of the funerals, we weren't able to actually go to the island. The plan was to go over there and help with the service on Sunday morning. Hopefully, we'll be able to go back at some point and do that. But this is where Jamie is originally from. A lot of his family lives on Efate. And again, the islands are very close together in this way. Go to the next slide there. This is, we went to visit some of the friends that they have, and they were making coconut milk for us. Again, they were so inviting while we were there. I don't know how many coconuts they opened up and gave us coconut milk to drink, and just a lovely people, very inviting, and a lot of them are Christians that Jamie works with there. Go to the next slide. And this is where the cyclone came in. And their house, the picture is being taken from the house, and there was an older lady there that really is immobile, heavy-set woman, and she was just sitting on a mat outside the hut. And when the cyclone came, she thought she was going to be okay, and they barely got her moved before the cyclone wiped out the hut where they were living. And so again, the living conditions there are difficult. Very beautiful place. As you imagine, from the South Pacific, but very difficult place to live. And this is another one of the ladies making the coconuts. It was funny watching Nicholas and Beau on Fiji opening up coconuts and getting the milk out. It was a lot of work, and these people were just, I mean, they were able to do it just lickety-split, and just in just a matter of a few minutes, they had half a dozen coconuts there for us to eat the meat and also have the coconut juice to drink. I'm going to turn over to Jennifer for this time.
So this is a picture of Zelaya sleeping on my arm as we were going around the island. So as he said, it was a Kia Sorrento. So she's in between Randall and I in the back seat, and of course, 6-year-olds, 5 and 6-year-olds, they like to take naps while driving in the car. So at one point she fell asleep, and this was hard because she kept going back and forth between Randall and I, trying to find a spot where she wouldn't, as soon as we went over something or we had to pause, her head would drop like that. And so it's the mom in me is okay, I'm gonna hold your head so you don't fall forward. So I'm sitting there, part of me is holding her head at one point so she doesn't fall when we go over the speed bump and things like that. But this was after we had gone to Top Rock and ate lunch. So she was taking a little afternoon nap. She got to skip school that day to hang out with us. So she was having fun.
So we have a couple of slides to finish up our time in Vanuatu. I think one of the greatest things, and Zelaya was a good example of that, she really bonded with Jennifer while she was there, and Jennifer took her swimming, and it just was neat to see the bond that we had. We immediately fell in love with Jamie, and he was he is a dear, godly man, and has such a ministry with the people on the island, and we really bonded together with Jamie, and of course we already had that bond with Brigida, but Nicholas and Jamie really bonded. Well, all of us did. It was just a wonderful time being there with them, and I think it was a great encouragement for us to come and to be there and just to see their ministry and the support that they had. They've got a lot of ministry with the other places on the island. This is a picture before we left the morning that we were flying out of us with Jamie and Brigida and Zelaya. But it was really a great time of us getting to know them and their ministry there, what they do. A lot of their ministries right now is on Life Changer School, working with the teenagers and taking care of that. Just a side note, they work with the teenagers, and CEF comes and does a Good News Club every week with the younger kids at the school. So it was another connection of ministries. I connected Brigida with CEF years ago, and they are doing Good News Club with the younger kids on the island or at the school every week, which was really cool. And they help them with other things. So they partner with a lot of ministries there on the island. And we're going to talk at the end a little more about how we can help and what the future looks like. But it was really good to see the ministry that they had with people and just seeing them interacting wherever they were with people there. I think that was, that was their ministry. I'll talk about the rest of it. So we then flew to Melbourne. It was supposed to be a quick turnaround in Brisbane. It ended up, we got to Melbourne at 1 o'clock in the morning, something to do with their plane. They have the same problems we have with planes here. And so Jeremy and Leia both brought cars to the airport. Again, we were traveling to start with 9 suitcases, and then we were down to just 7 suitcases. But it was still 2 carloads for all of us to get there, and they met us at the airport. And we got to bed about 3 o'clock in the morning when we got to their house, and they were very accommodating. They had a 4-bedroom house, and there were 14 of us living in that house for the 4 nights we were there, 3 or 4 nights that we were there. Jeremy loves to cook like Beau, and this is Jeremy cooking one of the gourmet meals that we got there.
If I can interject.
Real quick, one of the really neat and interesting things that we found when we got to Australia was for a week and a half, Nick and I were going back and forth with each other. And apparently, though, sarcasm is part of So Nick and I should be in Australia, but let me say, all of a sudden from that week of Nick and I going back and forth, that changed like a complete 180, and the sarcasm that was given to Randall for the rest of the week was
From Jeremy.
So those of you that don't know, Jeremy was a summer missionary with me 30 years ago with CEF. And so Jeremy was a summer missionary for several years with me. Then he joined YWAM in 1999, did disaster relief in Turkey after hurricanes or earthquakes. And so that's where he met his wife, Alea. She's from Norway. They went through DTS together and then ended up being in one of the programs there of helping. And they ended up getting married and have 5 children. We don't have a picture of all of them. We never got them all together at the same time. But Jeremy and I really hadn't spent a lot of time together for the last 25 years. And so it was really good to get to know him. But I think both of us were acting like we were 25 years ago the whole time. It was just, but it was a great time of just fun visiting with them. He was in a downtime in ministry, and so we were able to just relax. We were able to go on some outings with them. And most of the time we talked is talking about their ministry and what they hope to produce and what they're able to do, because they just moved to Melbourne right after they were here last year. If you remember when Jeremy preached in August last year, they moved to Melbourne to begin a new base then. And where they were originally in a base had about 300 beds in an old Catholic monastery. It was abandoned and COVID just destroyed it, and YWAM has decided to sell that base. It's in a very ritzy part of the town, and so they had to move. And they moved to this house in southern part of Melbourne in Johnstown?
Frankston.
Frankston. And so they live there. They have a brand new home. It's still expensive, but they've got a brand new home to live in.
I wanted to interject.
Yes, please do.
So on the food situation, which you saw the pictures of the food there on their counter, I was absolutely spoiled the whole time on this trip because Beau cooked for us in Fiji and in Vanuatu. It was awesome. And then we get to Melbourne, and we're all just spoiled. Jeremy is doing these meals that I don't know if you can see, but there's meatballs and this gravy and these roasted vegetables. That's just one meal. He just outdid himself on us, and such an accommodating host. We just felt so loved and pampered, and it was just a nice thing for us to feel welcomed into their home, because we did feel kind of like, there's 5 of us, how are we going to fit in this house kind of thing, but they did not let that bother them. It was such a sweet time to get to know them and their whole family, which, again, none of us had really spent much time with them, and just to feel like we were part of their family was such a sweet thing. And that's just a sidebar with it. It was cool that Randall and Jeremy had that one-on-one time almost the whole time we were there, because the places that they took us, we would get in the car and they would take us places. They would sit together and sit, in the same car together and just be able to visit. So that was just, I think, a God thing in the sense that they were able, Randall was able to see more of what Jeremy's vision is and what they were wanting to do with their ministry. And this is fun. This is out in their backyard, Beau and their daughter Lena, and there's Nicholas being goofy on the back part of it, and then their son Josiah. They were playing cornhole and just back and forth, and such beautiful weather, I have to say, as well. It was really, God just blessed us with some beautiful weather. There's maybe one day that it was, maybe 2 days, I guess, just really raining, but it was still, not that bad. But here it was just a lot of fun just to hang out with their family and get to know them. And, okay, I'll say this too. Jeremy knew that I like coffee, so he planned these trips, the days that we went out, a lot around going to coffee shops. I'm not sure. I think we went to, the whole time we were there, 3 or 4 different coffee shops. It was amazing. Such good coffee and lattes and flat whites and everything. It was just so good. And this is one of the spots that we visited out in again, we were able to sit outside and drink our coffee. Such beautiful weather as well. And this is Alea, and then is that Daniel, and then Nicholas to the left.
Okay, so we went to a nature preserve. It's totally free. It's run by Victoria, right? Victoria. It's basically run by the government. So it was free to go in. Just walked right in. And essentially, I mean, it's a nature preserve, so it's not like a zoo where they're behind closed doors. We were really that close to the emu. And he was just kind of walking. He didn't care that we were there. He didn't like start running. We were like, okay, we like stopped because we were like, is he gonna run really fast away from us? What is he gonna do? But I mean, this is him actually walking toward Nicholas and Sherri. I got it from the other side too. So, but that's us in the background. But that thing was like 10, 15 feet from him. Didn't even bother him one bit. So, it's very interesting. And then this is where, I don't know, somehow we ended up by a possible concert was starting, and there was like this line of people. So we were like waiting for the cart, waiting for Jeremy and Alea. And this is Nicholas and Lena kind of chilling under a tree.
So Nicholas isn't here to share.
Defend himself.
Yeah, he can't defend himself, so. But Nicholas, everywhere he went, the youth and the children just were attracted to Nicholas, and he really had a ministry with, you saw there with Alea and Elena. And, but Nicholas stayed a couple of weeks, and he's touring in New Zealand now with his roommate, so he's living in a van down by the river. Anyway, this is a picture of all of us on the very southern tip. That's the Arctic Ocean behind us, and this is the very southern tip of Australia. And again, Jeremy and Leah, they're living in the southern part of Melbourne. They have access to the outdoors and a lot of things that you wouldn't have from where they were further into the city of Melbourne. And it's a metroplex of about 6 million people, so it's a very large city. And again, this is a picture of all of us. That day, again, we don't have all of their children in the picture, but you see Daniel in the back behind Jeremy and Leah, and then that's Mia. She just graduated from high school, and then Elena in front. Is it? Lena. I always forget her name. But the other two boys weren't there. But I want to just share a little bit before we do this last passage of Scripture of where both of the ministries kind of stand right now. We left with Bridgda and Jamie. One of the things that we got there, they had put in, those of you that get the prayer chain, we had it in there the last month or two about them wanting to build a house or buy a house to live in. Their goal is to get away from Life Changer School, especially the housing, and have their own house, and not be on full-time staff because it hinders them with all the other ministries they want to do. They're connected with YWAM and with other ministries in Vanuatu, and they really feel called to work with those ministries to help the islanders there and have an own ministry center. In talking with them, one of the things that became clear is they needed to develop an organization, both a local or national board there and possibly a board here. And one of the things they're going to be doing working with over the next few months, schools out, is developing a ministry plan and putting that together, and then hopefully be able to add board members to their national board. And any of you that are interested in being on their international board, we'll primarily be responsible for helping raise support for them on this side of the pond. And so that was a lot of where they are with ministry and what they're doing. They'll probably continue to work with Life Changers. They just won't be on full-time staff in doing that. And eventually, they want to own their own home. Probably they'll be renting after they leave Life Changers next year if their funds are there and available to do that, and be able to do that. With Jeremy and Alea, their ministry, they're going to be looking at starting a DTS. They need housing for the school, the participants, for the young people that will be coming. They actually had Ephraim staying with them. I thought we had a picture of Ephraim, but I don't see one in here.
He's taking that picture.
Oh, Ephraim's taking the picture, but he's a young man from Toronto area of Canada, went home for for the summer, and he had been through a DTS and just stayed there, and he was living with them. And so they'd like to find housing. Daniel is a part of their staff now, and they're hoping for him to move out as well and be able to give them more room in their house. And so they're needing housing for those who will be coming for DTS. One of the goals with the DTS in the spring is Jamie and Bridgda are very close. As many of you know, Bridgda started out with Jamie, was on staff for 2 years after her DTS. Did I say Jamie? With Jeremy. Anyway, she was on staff with Jeremy. I've got people up here to help me. But she went on an outreach to Vanuatu. That's how she ended up in Vanuatu. And they're looking at using Vanuatu as their outreach again as they do the DTSs. And so that's kind of where Jeremy does a lot of speaking for YWAM at conferences and other DTSs. He's kind of one of their main leaders now for the international organization, and goes around and does a lot of speaking, and he loves to teach on evangelism and ministry in that way. And so that kind of gives you an update on where they are. I'm going to let Beau jump in with the last passage of Scripture, and then I'm going to finish with how we can, as a congregation, moving forward, help the ministries there.
Yeah, so we started off earlier today, we talked about a passage from Romans, and Paul talks about how beautiful are the feet of those who are the messengers. And so as we go to look at this, I wanted to take this back to Jesus, as he was washing the feet of the disciples. And I want to read through this passage really quick. After washing their feet, he put on his robe again and sat down and asked, "Do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord. You are right, because that's who I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. I tell you the truth, anyone who welcomes my messenger is welcoming me, and anyone who welcomes me is welcoming the Father who sent me." So I want to point something out with this passage. One of the things that we always look at when we read through this passage, we talk about the humility of Jesus being able to wash the disciples' feet and be able to do that. But also look into the text and really understand that he's also kind of going in and talking about sending the message out across the world. And he's talking about who is the messenger and who is the sender. And we, as the senders to our missionaries, through Jamie and Bridgda and through Jeremy and Alea, that we are really here to be the people to wash the feet of those messengers, to be the people and be the church to help send that mission out to the world. And so one of the things that kind of taking this into a different way of not just washing the feet, being able to send them, but what can we do to better help support them to do that? And that's kind of what the whole purpose of that trip was, not to go out just to go see what they were doing, to check up on the missionaries, see what they were doing, but also see what we could do to better help them and better prepare them for the ministry that they are already involved in. And I'll say this, that is more about us as a church also being able to not just give financially to them. Finances are great. We all need money. We know that, right? We need to eat. We need those things. But that's not the only way that we support our missionaries. We support them through prayer. We support them through petitioning God for the things that they need. We support them financially. And finally, we can also support them by doing those things and going out and helping them when they need it. I would encourage us to this, like as we start looking at some of the ways that we can support these missions and do other things, is I would encourage you, what are ways that you can go? Maybe you're not able to go to the islands, but maybe you are. Maybe that makes a change of what we do in our lives to go support missions across the world. What do we have to change in our lives to be able to do that, so that we can support them in better ways? Not just the missionaries that we have over there, but the missionaries in different places. What missions can we go on? What missions can we do? Not just way over in Vanuatu, but also here. so I would encourage this, like, as we talk about this mission trip and kind of the ideas of ways that ICC can help those missionaries is to look at some of those things. Well, maybe God's calling me to be a part of one of these things, to go there, to help support. Maybe God's calling me to come and do those other things. Maybe I'm going out as the messenger, or maybe I'm just going to support the messengers that we have, and I need to go wash their feet. And that may mean that we have to physically get there to do that. And so I would encourage you, like, as I said, as we go through these things, in what ways can you and we as a church better help support them? So Randall, I'll let you jump
Okay.
into those.
So at the bottom of your outline in there, there's some specific things that we can do. Again, one of the things that really turned for us being able to be there with Bridget and Jamie and also with Jeremy and Leah is to know better how to pray for them and know what their needs are. And it's changed, again, those of you that are on the prayer list, how we pray for them and what they're doing. And so, again, Jeremy and Leah are starting a DTS up this spring. There's some specific needs they have to meet before that. One of them is financial, and we are moving missions money from one ministry to another, and we're going to support them another $200 a month. They're about 70% funded. And so we made a decision to move some money away from tiers. We've been giving a major portion of our missions money to tiers for about 20, 25 years. And we are going to be moving a substantial amount of that towards Jeremy and Leah and also to Brigida. We're going to be raising Brigida's support by about $4,500 this coming year, which is almost double from what she was getting from us. And her total will be about $9,000. Again, you will be voting on that. It's a part of the budget. And that's really the main change in the budget this year is moving missions money. And again, the budget's about the same as it was last year or this year, but we're going to be moving money away from tiers. And I want to say this, we love tiers. They're doing a great work. Tiers, when we started supporting them, were about where Jeremy and Leah are now and where Bridget is now. And we gave a lot of money to tiers. Their budget's probably about $1 million now. I don't know for sure, but they have a very massive organization. And so we feel like we need to support our fledgling missionaries that are needing the support now. And we're still supporting tiers substantially, as you'll see in the budget. But we felt like in leadership this is something we needed to do, and that'll be an opportunity for you to affirm that. The last thing is we are talking to Jamie and Brigida. They have a National Children's Day on July 24th, which is a national holiday, and they usually do a big outreach for that. The next week, a week after that, is their Independence Day. And they've been a country since 1980, and it's a big celebration for all of Vanuatu. And we are tentatively talking about going over there in July, somewhere around the 24th, possibly doing a day camp for several days leading up to Children's Day, and then having a big outreach on the island for Children's Day. And so right now, those of you that are thinking about the possibility of going next summer, this is kind of the plans we're looking at. I don't know anything else other than those potential dates and what we're looking at possibly doing as we're headed to Vanuatu next summer. And so that's something to be praying about individually and how we can support that. I don't know what the group will look like. I am hoping that we will actually meet up with the DTS and Jeremy and Leah on Vanuatu, and we will work together as we do an outreach on the island there. So there's a connection between Jeremy and Leah and Jamie and Brigida that is being reconnected. I don't know that we were a part of that other than just talking about it, but they're looking at possibly doing an outreach from their DTS to Vanuatu next summer. And so that gives you a feel for where we are. I want to open it up for questions. I know that Jeannie had a question on the green chilies. Any questions anybody has about our trip, about our relationship that we have as a church with Jeremy and Leah, and what we may have seen, or things you had questions on even from our presentation today? Yes, Paul.
Well, I have a question. How do these kids and life changers get to school, the ones that live in the scattered islands?
Yeah.
Gasoline's really expensive. How do they manage?
Yeah. It's interesting. Most of them live close to the school. They will live with a relative or a friend or somebody while school's going on. Some of them go home on the weekends, from what we understood. I know that on several occasions while we were there, bus fare, somebody would give a kid a bus fare. We did it on a couple occasions ourselves for them to get where they needed to on the island. And again, Jamie and Brigida will give them bus fare a lot of times for them to get home. But they live on the island during the school year, except on weekends sometimes. And a lot of it is around the school. And again, it's very impoverished area, and the kids are living basically in shacks and then coming to the school. One of the things that was interesting, this never happens here, but I would get up early in the morning and I would be outside of our place. We actually stayed, Sherri and Nicholas and I stayed at the school in their mission house, and Beau and Jennifer had Airbnb off-site. But I would be out there at 7 o'clock in the morning just reading my Bible and praying and stuff, and all these kids are at school at 7 o'clock in the morning. School didn't start till 8. And it was a refuge for them, the school was. And they would show up, they'd open the gates, there'd be kids waiting to get into the compound at 7 a.m. to be able to come into the school. And they would just hang out with their friends and be there for an hour beforehand, before school started. But it is difficult, a lot of them, to get there. And it can be a challenge. Steve. Oh, I'm sorry. I did a discipleship training school. It is a 3-month training school that they bring in people, and it usually is teenagers, but it's become a lot more older people now going, people even in their 30s and 40s. But it's a 3-month training school on site where they do teaching, and then they do a 3-month outreach. And it could be into a third world country, it could go into an Arab nation. They used to go into Turkey and different places. And so the discipleship training school is a 6-month program, 3 months on site, and then 3 months actually going out and doing ministry. Oh, TEARS. TEARS is the ministry in the Dominican Republic. It stands for True Evangelism Always Requires Sacrifice. And it's a couple from Oregon that moved down there about 30 years ago and lived in the barrio, which was a very poor area, and started ministering there, eventually built a school. They have a water treatment system there where they get free water to that area. They do a lot of outreach and pastor training now, and it's really blown up to be a full ministry. I was there in 2008 before they built the high school. And they're right now looking at adding on to the high school with some different things. But it's a very viable ministry in the heart of the Dominican Republic, ministering to refugees from Haiti. Again, Haitian refugees will come across the border and they're hated. And so they minister to them and help out with the Haitians and do a lot of other ministry, including a school there in Dominican Republic. Yes, Melinda.
For the kids who live around the school, what kind of accommodations are they living in? Are they living outside?
Well, most of the houses, again, there's usually 2 tiers of houses that they'll have. One would be in a cyclone-proof built house. That would probably be similar to, it'd be a cinder block house. And it would be similar to a house in America in the 60s. They have electricity, they have some modern accommodations, but it would be similar to something we would be aware of in normal house in the 60s. That was the best living situation. The worst one, they would be living in something we would have as a lean-to shed. We've got an old 100-year-old shed at our house, those of you who've been at our house. It would be similar to that, one room, might or might not have electricity, very, very basic accommodations and very poor. And so when a cyclone would come through, it would wipe that out. And then they have to rebuild, and that's where a lot of people would be left destitute. And that's where Jamie and Bridget stepped in a couple years ago. If you remember, we gave money towards that cyclone to help them out as they were ministering to the people on the island.
And what about the water, running water?
It's interesting, the tap water is actually good in most of Vanuatu. It just has a huge amount of calcium, which is terrible on kidneys. So long term, the effects of drinking the water can cause severe kidney damage. And so the water is actually purified water. It'd be similar to our tap water. It just has a lot of calcium in it. And so most people who can afford to, they'll try to either have a filter or they'll get drinking water by drinking water. Yes, Steve? So if you look at the bottom of your outline, it actually shows what we're supporting all of those three ministries presently and what we're proposing for 2025. And it's also in the back on the budget. If you look under the missions part, the back page on the missions budget there. So we have been supporting Bridget $4,530 a month, and it'll be raised to $9,000. I mean, a year. Yeah, that's a yearly support. To $9,000. Yeah. So also, just for those of you that may not know, all the money that supports Bridget and Jamie comes through our church. So people outside our church and some people in our church give extra towards that. Typical check will be around $1,000 a month now. $1,100 is about what the check has been every month this year for them. And again, of that is designated missions money. That is $4,530 for the year. And so that breaks down to what, about $310, $320 a month? So we're actually doubling almost Bridget's support. So here's another interesting thing we found out through Jeremy and Leah while we were there. Bridget, of course, was born and raised here. She was born and raised here. Her mom and brother are in the congregation. If you don't know Francis and Ronnie, Ronnie is Bridget's younger brother and Francis his mother. And they're members of our church here along with Amanda. And also Ronnie I know well. He lives in Bloomfield, now her dad. But she is a American citizen still. She, I think, may have gotten Vanuatu citizenship. I don't know that question. She does have dual citizenship, and so she is both a citizen of the United States and Vanuatu. Jamie has not even been able to get a visa to come to America, and that's a prayer request. They don't have an American embassy on the island. He has to go to Fiji, which is about an hour and a half airplane flight, to actually apply for a visa, and he has not been able to get approved for a visa to come to the States. So Zalea's never been home. She's 5 years old, and Jamie's never been to America. Through Jeremy and Alea, we found out that a missionary who marries on the mission field, that's a missionary from America, can actually apply for citizenship for their spouse. And I've made contact with a immigration lawyer that they gave me a contact with. I've already emailed them just to find out what that process might look like. And so if Jamie can become an American citizen, then he can just come anytime he wants to. Right now, he would be limited on visa, and having to get a visa is very difficult, and I'm not sure why. It's hard for a Vanuatu person to get a visa. I have a feeling it has to do with the fact that they're so poor, and they don't want somebody coming over here on a visa and just staying illegally. I'm assuming that may be part of it. But we are hoping to help Jamie get citizenship within the next year and actually be an American citizen, and he'll have dual citizenship as well.
Is Zalea an American citizen?
I don't know. Is she? Okay. Yeah, so she has got dual citizenship. Other questions?
You mentioned a lot of fruits and nuts,
Yeah.
but is there no agricultural industry of any kind?
Well, it's interesting. There's not agriculture as we know it. There's cows that are on Vanuatu, and there is some. Most of the people raise fruits, and that's what they eat. And there's a lot of fruits throughout the island, and they'll go out and of course, I don't know if they actually own the land. They just go and harvest fruits and vegetables there on the island. And so they do have some farming there, but it is limited for the islanders. Would you all agree with that?
Yeah, they have this thing called Mama's Market, and there's actually an article, I Googled it while we were there because I was curious. There's an article, we were trying to figure out what time it closed, right? The article states that these ladies come from like all over the islands, multiple islands, and they come, and it's right on the port in Port Vila, right where like the cruise ships land when they go to Vanuatu. And these ladies they come Monday morning. And what we saw when we were there was tarps on the ground. So it got me curious. That's why I looked it up. These ladies stay there. There's some ladies sleeping, some working the table. What it is they go from Monday and they stay there. That market is open 24/7 from Monday to Saturday. And these ladies stay there Monday through Saturday selling their fruits and vegetables that they've harvested. They go home. They are closed on Sunday so that the ladies can either go to church or go back to their village. And then they come back Monday and do it all over again the next week. So there were a lot of people sleeping and then taking turns. The other thing we noticed, it's not a lot of, you go to a flea market and you might see something that's worth this much at this person's stop. You go to a next stop, it's the same thing, it's worth this much. It's regulated in Vanuatu, so a pineapple at one person's stand is the same price as a pineapple at another person's stand. So there's no haggling going on, it's just which one you stop at, you like better or whatever. But it's also like a small pineapple is less than a bigger pineapple. So it's kind of that. It's not a lot of haggling, but some people have the same things, some people have different things. It just depends on where they're coming from.
Yeah, and one of the things we noticed kind of with the agriculture, was talking to Jamie as we were driving around the island, and we get to a certain spot, and much like we had the beetle over on the other side of Wolf Creek, right? Healing up all those, they had a coconut beetle that killed off a lot of the palm trees, coconut trees on one side of the island, if you look at that. So most of the agricultural, really, I guess they had probably some better looking cows in Vanuatu than they did Fiji. But a lot of the meats, what we noticed is it was mainly chicken, I think is what we were eating. I cooked it, I should know.
Yeah.
But we were cooking and we were eating mainly chicken, but she didn't see a lot of really any of that. All of it was frozen and brought in from somewhere else. So they don't have much of really kind of any agriculture other than, like you said, the fruits that came in from all those different places. There's all kinds of fruits. There was a lot of it that we would try and play and eat, and it's all just based on what time of year it is as well.
Yeah. I'll say, yes.
Don't they eat fish?
Go ahead.
I will say this, Nick and I we were somewhat disappointed. We wanted fish, but one of the things that we found really interesting, one of the reasons that we didn't have a lot of fish there, because we were looking for it time and time again, but one of the things that they will tell you is don't eat the reef fish. The reef fish can be bad, they can cause a lot of different things. Well, what we have to understand about those islands is that as you're around the islands of Vanuatu, even in Fiji in some ways, everything around there is reef fish. And because of the boats that they're using to get from one island to the next island, they aren't really deep sea fishing not a lot of fish is being eaten on either one of those islands.
which was interesting, that they're just, you would think that would be their primary source. And I'll say this about the chickens, the way they process a chicken, they take, I think, like a big butcher hatchet, and they just chop up the chicken, and you eat it. I mean, you're eating bones the whole time you're eating the chicken. You're spitting out bones, and they're just devoured. But that's how they actually butcher the chickens that you buy in the store. And it really, when you could buy chicken wings, that was a delicacy for them because they're actually intact. But,
They still cut them up.
Do they have milk-producing cows, or do they have milk?
they do have milk.
They have a little bit of milk, but still, probably most of it was probably more coconut milk than anything
Yeah.
else. They didn't have a lot of milk. It wasn't a big staple in their diet or anything like that. Same with cheese. You know, that's the very American thing that they don't have a lot of that from over there.
The milk was a lot of powdered, so like it was like not cold milk, like not, you didn't just get like a, yeah, it was like boxed on the shelf.
Yeah.
So,
And again, if you go to a supermarket, it would be like going down to Farm Fresh. You had all the things we have here, but the islanders can't afford it. And so they weren't partaking of that. That was for tourists and those that are expats that live there. Yes, Elijah.
Not really. That was actually one of the things that Zalea and David asked for to come from here was the seaweed, which is kind of interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
for snacks, so they didn't eat a lot of seaweed either.
Yeah. Yes, Rob?
Did they have dogs and cats?
Yes.
yes, they had island dogs, or they just were kind of there. They didn't necessarily belong to anybody.
Yeah.
We did see one on, I guess it was Fiji. I can't remember now. They're all going together. But we were on this island on the beach, and this dog was like digging, like he would smell in the sand the crab, and then would start digging, find the crab, and like eat the crab, and that was like how he got his food. See, we don't really know who they belonged to. They were just kind of around.
I don't think that the Vanuatu people or the Fijian people actually have pets like we do. They can't afford them. And so there's a lot of dogs and cats running around, but they're not somebody's pets like we would consider pets. And they were mostly friendly. I mean, we weren't ever in a situation where we felt like that there was a dog that was going to attack us.
What about cats? Cats? He was asking about cats as well as dogs.
Yeah, there are cats there as well.
They roam free.
Yeah.
You know what the crime rate is?
You know, it's one of the things in Vanuatu is domestic violence is about 80%. That's one of the big things that Brigida and Jamie do is minister to people who are involved with that. And violence is pretty high. And robbery is also pretty high. And you will find that in a developing country. But the crime rate's pretty high there. And we never felt threatened while we were there, but we weren't out on the streets at night.
Well, there was that one night.
Beau decided to get lost.
Oh, got lost.
We ended up driving down the road, and we ended up to a street, I'm not kidding, called Darker Road, where droves of people were walking down towards us. It was actually kind of funny, we kind of got lost, but it was kind of an interesting thing because there was just so many people around coming out. I don't think we ever felt really threatened while we were there, even at that point. But I do think we got some kind of crazy looks of driving into, a neighborhood in
Yeah.
the middle of the night.
Yeah. It was funny for Beau, it wasn't for Jennifer.
Zalea told them that he's a crazy driver.
I would describe that as accurate.
Well, guys, we'll be glad to field any other questions or anything personally. Our time we've gone over this morning. I hope this has been helpful for you guys to get a feel for the missionaries we have over there. We want to celebrate communion before we leave this morning and close our service. And again, one of the things that just comes to my mind as I think about our time there. We walked into a church 8,000 miles away called ICC and immediately felt welcome and a part of the family and a part of the congregation. And something that the gospel does is it brings the whole world together. I mean, the people on the school, they were so precious to us. They gave us gifts that we were leaving, what they could afford to give. And it's just amazing when you go across the world, wherever you go, Christ's presence is there. And there are brothers and sisters who struggle with the same things we struggle with, that need the same gospel that we need in the peoples there. And it is a universal gospel. And when the Great Commission was given and Jesus said to the disciples to go into all the world, the gospel has gone into all the world. But here's one of the things that we saw with Vanuatu. Vanuatu is considered a Christian nation. There are churches everywhere. But guess what? Church attendance is down there. The one difference is nobody works on Sunday. Everything's closed on Sunday, which was wonderful because you go into town and it's just vacant. And I mean, there are a few businesses open, but for the most part, everything's closed. And people take that day off, but they don't observe it by going to church anymore. And we're always one generation away from the church going out of existence. And we've seen that in our culture, where church attendance 40 years ago was a major thing across our nation. It's diminished, and it's going away. And so there's a lot of Christians, but there's a lot of unchurched Christians. But the thing that I would say is there is the bond of Christ wherever we go with Christians wherever we are. And it's because of what Christ did for us. And so I'd ask for you to come forward and get communion, and we're going to take it together as we close this morning and celebrate what Christ has done for us. So if you want to come forward and get communion, and we think about the incarnation and God sending His Son. I'm going to talk about this some more next week. God went on a mission trip across the universe. And He gave up everything to come and to reach us with the gospel. And I think when we think of missions, we need to think of that first of all. That God's mission to save lost humanity cost Him everything. And again, I'm going to share next week about missions and the need for missions and the purpose of missions and things like that. But there is no sacrifice that we could ever make that would make up for the sacrifice that Christ made when He came to this earth. Nancy's holding a newborn baby back there, and think about the Creator of the universe becoming a newborn baby. That's what we're celebrating at Christmas. And it's awesome to think of what God did. And it is the most important motivation for us to go do missions, wherever that may be. Our missionaries are just like us. You know, they're not, quote, special, just like I'm not special. They're just people committed to the mission. And the mission is to bring the gospel to a lost world. And Jesus said, when you eat the bread, you remember my mission. You remember what I did and accomplished for you on the cross. Let's eat. And again, Jesus said this cup represents the new covenant. And I mentioned a while ago about wherever you go in the world and you fellowship with Christians, there's an immediate bond. I mean, it was like Jamie and I and Nicholas and Beau and Bridget and all of us known each other our whole lives. There's that bond that when we're together in mission that is so real. And it's because of what Christ did for us. And we're brothers and sisters in Christ. Let's drink. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity we have to serve you, both here and over the whole earth. And we get to be a part of your mission to reach the nations for the gospel. And help us support those that we support as missionaries. Help us to love them, pray for them, and when we have the opportunity to go and be with them, to help them with their work. And we pray specifically for Jeremy and Leah, and for Brigida and Jamie and their children as they serve you in other parts of the world, sacrificing to be on that field to take the gospel to those that need it. And we pray your blessing upon them this Christmas season. May you provide for them everything they need. And Lord, help them to feel loved and supported by those of us who are here. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Let's stand and close with our benediction. May the God of peace make you holy in every way, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless until our Lord Jesus Christ comes again. God bless you. Have a great week.